Hello and welcome to another edition of the Crypto Club and Digital Asset Weekly Catch-Up on Zoom. It is Sunday the 12th of January 2025, and as is always the case with these sessions, we never know quite what we're going to be talking about. Doesn't matter if you're a novice or an expert, stick around. We talk about a variety of topics, including blockchains, layer 1 and layer 2 solutions, DeFi, NFTs, ICOs, STOs, all sorts of three-letter acronyms, really. We sometimes delve into the mysteries of CBDCs or central bank digital currencies, talk about regulations, stable coins, and so much more besides. So if you're new to crypto and blockchain, then stay with us and hopefully learn something of interest. If you're more experienced or you're running a project, come along on a future session and you can take part in our Gone in 3 minutes. And this is where we get you to do an elevator pitch of 3 minutes in duration. No slides, no video, nothing else, just you talking about what the project's about. So with that, let's see who's going to come and join us today. Hey, Annie, good evening to you. Welcome back.
Hello, good evening.
And hi to Gabriella as well. Hi, Gabriella.
Good evening.
And sort of joining, we've got someone else who's joined who's got a lovely backdrop of somewhere. And the name King, is that King Trillion? Say hi, King. Well, King is
Hi
staying quiet.
everyone.
Hey, welcome
How you
aboard.
doing?
Hey, we're good.
Thank you.
So,
Long time, Gary.
oh, sorry, I don't recognize the name.
Yeah, there's Kinkov here. Kentalion. Kinkov.
Ah, okay, right. And you're based, where is it again?
Saudi.
Saudi, okay, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So how are things going there now? You still working on some interesting projects there?
Yeah, asset manager by background. So I mean the last time we spoke I was looking to researching on how to integrate blockchain for asset register, and to make the asset management more robust,
Okay.
basically. So yeah, that's where I am at the moment. There are a lot of moving parts, so still
Yeah.
working on it.
Yeah. It's interesting because I keep seeing cycles of exploration around blockchain and crypto every few years. And I remember I actually did a 5 main use cases of blockchain. I actually did it as a TikTok, I think, at one point. I'm trying to remember what the 5 were
Yeah.
because it was digital identity, um, chain of custody or provenance, which
Problem.
is
Yeah.
you're kind
Yeah.
of describing, uh,
Mhm.
programmability or trusted programmability, which is used in smart contracts. Um, and I'm trying to remember what the others were now, but I keep seeing the same kind of patterns going through, and provenance is always one of them that keeps coming back.
Mm.
This whole idea of either tracing whether it's physical assets or digital assets, having them on a ledger where you've got the provenance, the traceability, and everything, just keeps
Mm.
coming back.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
aside from a few companies, a few years ago, Everledger was quite well known in the space for diamond provenance.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
they did quite well, and then they had some internal financial challenges,
Mm.
and so it died away. But I think they're re-emerging again. But I've seen it with a number of others as well, where that there've been cases like in the shipping sector,
Right.
doing trade finance linked to the shipment of containers and goods on vessels, and there was some
Mm.
work done with that with
Yeah, I
Maersk
think
Shipping.
I've heard something like that in Dubai, which is
Mhm.
close to me here.
Yep.
Because I'm a chartered engineer. My background is more of infrastructure, so that's what infrastructure assets is what I'm looking at.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Dubai has got this fantastic program going on the blockchain. I haven't followed for quite some time, so I don't know how, or I mean, at what level they are at the moment.
Okay.
But I think they've got something really uh, fantastic going on there.
Yeah. I keep pointing people to the United Arab Emirates for true innovation in the crypto space. I think that
Correct.
Dubai and Abu Dhabi in particular are really paving the way because they're investing heavily in terms of creating the capabilities and the facilities. So Dubai was doing things with, like, I think it was DIFS
Yeah,
and the port and everything like that.
yeah,
Abu Dhabi is clearly a leader in crypto regulation, and so
correct.
ADGM, is it Abu Dhabi, the
Oh, the municipal,
regulator?
yeah, the regulator, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
They've been doing lots of really good stuff about paving the way. Because if
yeah.
you can get regulation in place, then it makes it generally more
It makes it
acceptable and
generally,
easier.
yeah, a bit easier.
Yeah.
Saudi is, I mean, the kingdom is also looking to that direction at the moment, but it's in the infant state because there are a lot of stuff going on here,
Hmm.
and they're trying to get to that level. And I'm pretty much sure very soon, not too distant future. They might be rubbing shoulders with Abu Dhabi and I mean UAE, or even
Yeah.
bypass them in terms of technology and
Yeah.
um,
I know as well. I was quickly going to offer. There was a project. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago now,
mm,
which was a cross collaboration between. I think it may have been a kind of central bank or banking in Saudi Arabia, and some of the
mm,
Gulf states around. It was called
mm.
Project ABER, was it? ABER.
Oh, I think you might. Did you work on that? You sent me something some time ago.
No, I
No.
didn't. I
Okay.
didn't work on it directly, but that was interesting because that was kind of, it was almost like an early stage central bank digital currency for
Mm.
wholesale.
Ah,
So
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard of that. Kind of on the back burner at the moment because
mhm,
of other, important and kind of. I mean, some stuff have taken precedence. Let's put it that way.
no,
Yeah.
yeah. So you say you're interested now is in kind of like traceability of infrastructure on blockchain. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. You can summarize it to be that. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, keep us posted as you make progress. We're all keen to listen and learn more.
Yeah. No worries. Cheers.
Good. That's good. And Annie, sorry. Oh, I was asking you initially, any new or interesting things that you're hearing about, or you're getting involved in, or you want to learn more about?
Well, I thought what King Tillian just said is quite interesting. He's talking about the infrastructure of blockchain.
Now, that's
That's
a
something that you can present more as to what do you mean by that.
go for it, King Trillion. What did you actually mean by infrastructure? Did you mean the
Right.
blockchain infrastructure, or
No.
using blockchain to effectively
Yeah.
inventory
So
and track infrastructure?
leveraging blockchain, not blockchain infrastructure, but leveraging blockchain for infrastructure projects. So like
Yeah.
roads, bridges, tunnels, street lights, all infrastructure development in terms of the physical infrastructure, not blockchain infrastructure, but using the blockchain technology.
Ah, okay. Because there's a lot of work being done on that a couple of years ago, particularly with the concept of things like digital twins. And I know certainly in the UK there's a principle around BIM. So this is building information management. This whole idea of creating digital images of physical infrastructure, whether that's buildings, roads, or whatever, lines itself really nicely that if you're going to have a digital twin, why don't you have it on a blockchain and make it traceable and trackable? And then you can manage your inventory. You've got complete
Yeah.
control of everything.
Augmented realities were all embedded in that. We use that on the London tube because I was in London for some time. Well, I'm from the UK actually, but
Yeah.
I'm based here working. So we are the digital twins and the augmented realities were all integrated, BIM and stuff like that. Yeah. I know ACOM is looking into. Yeah, I worked for ACOM before. They're looking into getting the blockchain, technology integrated into all these technologies,
Okay.
as well as the AI, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is where it keeps coming back to. I kind of describe it as the three new triangles of force, the trifecta of kind of like AI, blockchain, and whatever the third thing is these days.
Yeah.
So sometimes the third thing is like IoT, so in Internet of
Yeah.
Things. So
Yeah.
the ability to track and trace things.
Interoperability. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
But the more I hear about it, I think that third thing may be AI, IoT, and VR, MR, and AR. So
Yeah.
the whole
The
reality
whole.
layer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's fascinating how it evolves, because I guess that then starts bringing in concepts of like as you're saying about digital twins, but also metaverses and
Exactly.
replicated environments.
Tokenization is also around the corner and all that.
Mhm.
Tokenization.
Yeah, this is where I think we're living in an absolutely amazing time. So we'll see where that goes.
So
Correct.
I'm quite interested just now with what you just said, because I happen to project manage a BIM team. And of course, as I mentioned before, that I was also involved in augmented reality and that sort of thing. I'm curious now. So basically, King Tillian, you just clarified your points. You're trying to use blockchain to build infrastructure. So let me try to kind of see if my understanding is correct to your
Mm.
correction. So what
Yeah.
you're saying, so I know that blockchain is basically like a platform where it
Yeah.
actually facilitates AI. So it doesn't, so it's not like it's contradicting. So it's facilitating how AI works.
Yeah. Mhm.
So am I just trying to think you're trying to use the information that you can get
Mhm.
out of a blockchain platform
Mhm.
that can be in AI format, or it can be, well, I don't know. I mean, there's quantum computing coming up as well. So I wondered whether is it more powerful than things like ChatGPT and the sort of thing that is already in existence, so that you can be more efficient in your design of infrastructure. Is that what you mean?
So that's one part. So that's say the front part of it. So if you go to the back part of it, where the infrastructure is already completed and you want to maintain it to make sure you extend the longevity of the infrastructure, you need to do a survey, condition surveys, and where the surveys goes, there are systems already. But with blockchain, you can track those conditions, and then when the condition, the data is used, to inform in terms of decision making for repairs, for maintenance, for all that. So what uh, asset register basically. So the blockchain will become the asset register where, yeah. So basically that's what it is, and then you can get all your information from there.
I
And then
see.
obviously AI will help you to optimize it in terms of the optimization of maintaining the asset. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
I always think of it as kind of like three layers in any of these solutions, whether they're blockchain or whatever. Like
Mm,
first of all, you need the ability to capture the data.
correct.
So this is where IoT may come into play,
Mm-hmm,
of actually recording things. Then you want a data storage layer, which is what a
mm-hmm,
blockchain or a DLT provides in a secure environment. And then you
mm-hmm.
want a presentation layer, and this is where the analytics and the compute and
Analytics part
everything.
comes in. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's kind of so. This is why I always think of it as the like your foundation is the blockchain, which stores everything and distributes
Mm-hmm.
everything. You've
Yeah.
got the data capture layer
Yeah.
in whatever means, and then you've got the presentation, and that's where it spins off. And it's nice Elena's just joined us as well, because part of the future presentation, I think, is moving away from just pure play, reports, graphs, tables,
Graphs.
this kind of
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
to being interactive,
Interactive.
immersive.
Correct. Yes.
This is where metaverse type capabilities, VR, MR, AR,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
all starts coming together wonderfully.
Well, yeah.
Um, but I've yet to see anyone achieve it.
that's that's a big journey that everyone is trying to take now. Yeah, it's a big step, a big leap, but I'm sure with communities, uh, uh, um, community as a reservoir of knowledge, and working together collaboratively, I'm sure we will get there, but it's going to take some time. But even look at it, AI. Although we knew of AI a few years back, it wasn't just recent. It wasn't just after the COVID, isn't it? And it took off just like that.
I think a lot of it, because people keep saying, why is it that blockchain's taking so long to develop, and yet AI has been like massive and really
Yeah.
fast. But the reality, the first discussions about AI took place in, I think it was 1956. So it's actually a technology that as a concept is over 70 years old.
Correct.
But what suddenly happened, and it was kind of just after the lockdowns and that, was the introduction of some of the new large language models, and generative AI. So this is where ChatGPT being the example, where all of a sudden this was having something which you could kind of converse with and that could present things. That's where it really woke people up, because it was kind of like it was a step change. Anyone, when they first started using ChatGPT, it was a little bit kind of like when they first started using Google, where anyone who'd used previous search engines, where they were like drop down selections and all sorts, and Google was just, well, type in what you want to find. And ChatGPT was kind of like that. So I'm going to try and talk a little less this evening, because I'm spluttering away at the moment. So I'd welcome any other input and say hi to Elena. And also we've got someone who's joined us which says it's either number 2 in Roman numerals or ill or whatever. You want to pop off mute and say hi? No, they're not going to. Or Annie, conversely, do continue asking away, because like Elena, you both asked some really interesting questions.
Well, I think Elena should have a chance, because I already have my chance. Elena, you go. It's your turn now.
No, well, as soon as I have a question, I'll ask it straight away. Even if it means I'll have to interrupt someone, which I usually try not to do.
It's okay.
Yeah. Elena is sometimes a little bit like, if anyone's seen the American detective series Columbo, where there was the American detective who used to stay really, really quiet and hardly ask anything, and then right at the end would ask the absolute ultimate question. And I think in some ways Elena is like that she stays quiet and then she says, just going back to what you said right at the beginning.
No, it usually means that since the beginning, the flow of conversation, the conversation was going so nicely that I even wouldn't have a chance to interrupt.
Yeah. Maybe we need Gabriella to start asking more questions then. What do you reckon, Gabriella? Because you always listen very intently.
Yes, I have a question.
Great.
Okay, it's about privacy again. Okay. Is how the privacy enhancing tools like the Lightning Network and CoinJoin impact Bitcoin's perception as a public ledger?
Okay, so I'm not familiar really with how CoinJar works. In terms of privacy, there's different things about privacy, and it's sometimes worth digging into it more. Do we mean the privacy of individuals, or do we mean the privacy of the transactions between individuals? First of all,
in that case, using Lightning Network and CoinJoin, I think is more focused on individuals and peer-to-peer.
Okay, so it's the ability to undertake value transfer whilst remaining anonymous. Is I guess ultimately it. Okay, this is where it gets very interesting straight away, because you've got the challenge that, first of all, everyone believes they've got the right to transact anonymously. Okay, so if I choose to hand $10 to somebody, I shouldn't have to report that. Okay, that's one thing. On the other side of the fence, if I wish to anonymously transfer $10 million, that might seem a little bit suspicious. So in terms of anonymity, it's very difficult because as individuals, we want the anonymity, but we also want to avoid things like money laundering, criminal activity, terrorist financing, all this kind of thing, which is why the EU has introduced some legislation called MiCA, which is the Marketing Cryptocurrency Assets, which includes things like complete transparency and traceability through a thing called the travel rule. So it's the requirement to be able to track where funds have come from and where they've gone to at an individual, not a wallet level, but actually an individual level. So this is where things like mixers or privacy coins have kicked in because they allow you to transact without that. Sorry, Gabrielle. Go.
No, I'm sorry, but you can mix, for example, with Whirlpool. From Whirlpool, you can mix if you want. No, I don't know if nowadays this is something legal, illegal. I don't know.
Illegal, yeah.
Illegal, I don't know, illegal, illegal, or.
So I'll show you some news. In fact, because this actually popped up in the news a couple of days ago, and this is about some Russians facing money laundering over mixing services, and this is the U.S. Department of Justice, where that they ran a couple of mixing services called Blender.io and Symbad.io, and the claim is, oh well, North Korean hackers were using this, and so that was something where these Russians have been charged with kind of like sanctions breaches by providing this facility. So that was announced a couple of days ago, even though they're actually arrested last month. And the whole thing is that they're being charged with like money laundering and all this kind of thing. And it's a really, really difficult one because it does come back to everyone wants the ability to transact anonymously, because who needs to know who I'm spending my money with or who I'm transacting with? But equally, everyone understands why you don't want to provide the ability for bad people to be able to transact. So it's a difficult trade-off, and that's why a lot of these mixing services are frowned upon by the legal services.
Okay.
I try to avoid going beyond that because it gets a bit controversial after that.
Okay, but related with Lightning Network, it means that I can transfer peer-to-peer quickly, that without using Lightning Network. I mean, imagine, for example, traditional banks. I can transfer $1 million, for example. It takes, I don't know, it takes maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Forever. It takes forever.
Exactly. And with Lightning Network, using Lightning, I can do it in 1 second.
Well, you can do it either using Bitcoin directly peer-to-peer.
Exactly. Using Bitcoin.
Yeah, you can do that, or alternatively, you can do something. If you use Litecoin, for example, or Bitcoin Cash, or many of the other cryptocurrencies, you can do very high-speed transfers. I used to meet up with somebody as part of a crypto group, and we used to, just for fun, sitting next to each other, transact, sending, I think we did Litecoin to each other. And it's quite funny just how fast it was. Now, you could potentially do that with millions of dollars. Absolutely.
Well, I'm trying then to understand why using Lightning, what is the difference if you use Lightning or you don't use? Is because of privacy or?
No, so Lightning Network, I believe, first of all, is a justification to not use a blockchain properly. And people might disagree with me on that. But let's look at what the Lightning Network does first of all. Okay, so going right back, how does Bitcoin work? Well, Bitcoin, you've got a wallet address, I've got a wallet address, and I send a payment with a signature to prove who I am, to say transfer this amount from this wallet address to this wallet address. Okay. And that's all done across the Bitcoin network, and that can take potentially several hours, because you have to wait for the block to be processed. You have to then wait for consensus to confirm that block. Then you have to wait for a few more blocks to be confirmed to be certain it's never going to get changed. What the Lightning Network does is it says, right, well, when two of you begin, you effectively fund a non-blockchain account, so an off-chain account, but we'll write to the blockchain how much each of you put into it. So it might say, well, Elena's got 0 Bitcoin, Gary's got 1 Bitcoin, okay. And then you go onto the Lightning Network, and then Elena and I can do whatever transactions we want to. We can keep buying and selling things between each other, exchanging the amounts, and then at some point, we say, right, enough's enough. Let's close the account now, and we'll pay each other however much it works out to. And then that transaction goes back to the Lightning Network, which means all of those other interactions that may have happened in between aren't recorded directly on the blockchain. So a couple of things about that is that it means, first of all, you haven't got the visibility of those transactions, which as individuals, we might be very happy about. Regulators won't be happy because they want this whole thing, this traceability in that. But the main reason people tend to use that is simply because the transaction fees are much, much, much lower, and it's much faster. But it's effectively, it's like Elena and I setting up our own separate piggy bank and us putting money into it and taking it out, and then at some point just writing the results of that piggy bank back to the blockchain. So I'm not ever a great fan of Lightning Network or any other layer 2 solution, in fairness, because I think it's actually avoiding using a blockchain, and I'd rather we actually use that. Go for it, King.
Gary, Base is Base layer 2 network, correct?
There are multiple, but I think Base is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So would you categorize that under the Lightning Network framework?
Well, I think it's a separate one.
Right.
And I don't really know, because I don't take a great interest in layer 2 solutions.
Okay.
I've never had a great interest, and to me,
You're
when you're using a layer 2, you're not using the blockchain.
Blockchain, correct. Right.
Yeah. So as to whether Base is part of Lightning Network, I don't know.
Okay. And I guess we all want a less costly transaction fees, isn't it? So if there is a solution which is giving us, but I guess I get your point. Then is you can't really trace it. It's untraceable, and the authorities are not happy with that. But that's our business. Authorities shouldn't know a lot of things about us anyway, at the end of the day.
Okay, but one thing is that the transactions are not traceable, but are reflected on the blockchain.
Yes.
Not necessarily, no.
No. I
but
think
not
that
on the. Yeah, you could see the transactions, but it's not on the blockchain, like using the blockchain to trace it.
Yeah.
But if I'm sending from my address to your address, Kim, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you with my address, once I send you the Bitcoin with my address, if you go with my address to the blockchain, to the block, to verify with my address to the block, you can see this my transfer on the blockchain with my address, even if you didn't receive it yet.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Gary,
only eventually.
Right.
So
right. After the fact.
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, and I must dig out some documentation on it again, what it is that you have a beginning state where you write to the blockchain, you know, that this is how much Bitcoin Gary's got, this is how much Bitcoin Elena's got, and you create what's called a channel, or I think it's called a channel with Lightning, whereby you effectively say, right, ring fence these two accounts, okay, and leave them alone. Then you go off chain. So your off chain solution, whether it's Lightning, Base, or an Excel spreadsheet, is now off chain. So you're doing transactions. So it could be on a database, it could be anything. And it's only that at a point in time where either of you in that kind of like syndicate or group or whatever decide to close it off, that's the point at which a final update gets written back to the blockchain that says, well, now, you know, it started off with Alina had 0 Bitcoin, Gary had 1, and now it's got Elena's got half a Bitcoin and Gary's got half a Bitcoin. But that's the only transaction that's actually written to the blockchain. All of the other intermediary things may not be.
Right.
So if I was like a merchant, say like Starbucks, for example, then it would mean that Starbucks could potentially have it whereby you do it all off chain with your transaction to Starbucks, and then eventually it all gets closed off, which means, you know, every single till receipt doesn't go onto the main blockchain, just the final closing one does. Now
that's interesting.
Now the reason people like that is multifold. One of which is it's fast. So again, if you think about the Bitcoin blockchain, a block only gets confirmed every 10 minutes, is it?
Yeah.
I think, and you need about 7 blocks to confirm to be sure. So that means a true transaction security takes an hour to transfer the amount. Whereas with a layer 2 solution, you can do it in a second or less. So some people like it because it's fast. Another thing is that it's typically much lower cost because you're not having to transact on the blockchain directly, so you're not paying fees, which makes it a lot cheaper, which is attractive for people as well. And then you've got the potential that it provides an anonymity thing. So people use it for different reasons, but certainly faster, cheaper, and potentially anonymous are 3 of the reasons. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only way of doing it, because again, you're taking it off the blockchain. So you look at, well, what could you do instead? And sticking with Bitcoin, and this is exactly why you've got Bitcoin Cash, so BCH instead of BTC, which has got a different block size, which means that transactions get processed much faster. It means that the cost of transactions is much lower, but kind of like computationally, it's the same as Bitcoin. It's just like processes quicker and it's a lot cheaper. So you've solved 2 of the problems there without having to go onto a layer 2 solution. So if you read, there's a book, I was just checking to see if I had it to hand or don't. I think it's called Who Hijacked Bitcoin, or How Bitcoin Was Hijacked, which was written by Roger Ver, who is heavily into supporting Bitcoin Cash. And his thesis is that Bitcoin, as in BTC, was intentionally made to not run quickly and was intentionally made to be expensive in order to force people onto other capabilities. And he said, you didn't need to do that. If you change the block size, you actually solve the problem of speed and cost. And that's his argument for BCH. So there are different ways of addressing these things. It really depends what you're trying to achieve. It doesn't solve anonymity, but for some people, anonymity, some people aren't too worried about. It really depends on the scale and the nature of it.
Right.
So, Gabrielle, I don't know if that kind of helps with your point about Lightning Network and Layer 2. That my understanding is that different people use it for different reasons. Anonymity may be one of the reasons, but I think a lot of people do it because it's simply faster and cheaper.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was a good one, and I didn't cough too much.
No, it actually makes me having a question. That was a good one, Gabriel. Thank you so much. So my question would be that does that mean there is such a thing called layer one, layer two? And then my question would be for you, Gary, because knowing that you have done transaction with shops in London before, so how exactly does the process work? Because you don't do layer two, so presumably that is a layer one.
So I actually did both. So it was interesting. And this is Annie and I were having a chat about this recently. I was pointing out I have actually paid for things in Bitcoin and in Litecoin and a few other things as well. But it is still relatively difficult to buy and sell physical goods with crypto. However, there was a burger stand which I think it's closed now. What was in London, in an area, anyone knows London, a place called Brick Lane.
Yeah.
And Brick Lane had a burger bar, which was called Bit Burgers, which is quite clever, as in Bitcoin, Big Burger. And I actually bought, and this must have been a long time ago now, because it was a burger and I don't eat meat these days. I bought burger and fries and I paid for it directly in Bitcoin. And it was a peer-to-peer transaction where the stall holder had their mobile phone with their crypto wallet on it. And I had my crypto wallet, and we simply used, I think it was the QR codes on the devices. And so I paid using Bitcoin directly layer one. Okay, so that worked. And it was fascinating because I think by the time I've actually bought burger and fries, the price had changed and all kind of thing, which is one of the problems with using Bitcoin directly. Then a couple of years later, I was at an event, which it may have been in Shoreditch, which is kind of, in London, it's kind of like the IT startup area type thing. And I was in a bar there, and they were offering to take payments in Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Dash, I think it was. But that was using the layer two solution. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And so I paid, and I think I used the same wallet. It was just a crypto wallet on a mobile phone where I happened to have some Litecoin on it. And I paid using that. This time, I think it was using touch to pay, so an NFC payment. So it was simply you hovered your phone over the device and it potentially sucked all the information off my phone and probably hacked it and all sorts. But that worked again, and that was instant. The user experience was the same. It's ultimately I've got an application on my mobile phone that says I've got X Bitcoin, and I make a payment, and it now says I've got Y Bitcoin, or Litecoin, or Bitcoin Cash, or any of the others. So from the user experience, you don't really notice whether it's a layer one or a layer two solution, which I think is correct. I always argue that for crypto and blockchains to be successful, you should never need to know the underlying technology. In just the same way that, if you make a transaction through your bank, you don't know whether they're using a Microsoft SQL Server database, an Oracle database. Are they using Hadoop? Are they using... Technology shouldn't matter. And this is my argument that successful blockchain solutions will come about when you don't realize it's on a blockchain. And I did some work helping a startup a few years ago where they did exactly that they introduced the insurance capabilities for companies and that, and it was using blockchain technology, but they didn't particularly make a big deal of the fact it's on a blockchain. But it was very good because they were using smart contracts to do all the complex calculations, and that just worked. So that was quite nice.
So basically, it doesn't really matter if it was Lightning or whatever. So when it comes to actually you're transacting to buy something, you don't really mind what they actually use.
Well, it comes back to I sometimes ask people a question that I know I asked here recently, so you'll now know the answer to it, which is do you have any money in your bank account? And this is where everyone goes, yeah, oh yeah, I've got money in my bank account, and then I prove to them that they don't. That they've actually issued the bank a loan, so it's not their money. But then the next thing is when you say to people, do you understand how a payment works from your bank account? And everyone goes, well, what do you mean, do I understand how payment works? Yeah, sure, I go into a store, I tap my phone or whatever, and it makes payment. Well, do you realize that you're actually going through what's called a merchant service, which is like an intermediary that the shop has engaged with in some way? So they might be using a third party like WorldCom, who provide the payment service processing, and then it'll go via your bank, which will then make a transfer, probably via the Swift network or wherever it is these days. And there's all sorts of things when you start looking at like the messaging of how a bank payment goes. It's actually smoke and mirrors. Something that looks like something that has just come out of your bank account and has gone into someone else's bank account actually hasn't, more often than not. What's happened is that they've debited your account and they've credited the correspondent account, but the actual payment hasn't actually happened immediately. That happens overnight generally through what's called a settlements process. But to the end user, that they don't know about this magic. Most people haven't heard of Swift, and Swift is like the network between most of the big banks, where they exchange information through what are called, I think it's MTIs. So the different messaging types that basically say make a payment or receive a payment. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly complex, but to the end user, you don't know about the complexity. It's just magic. Yeah. So
my next question is, Gary, thank you, is that you need time to have a drink. I'm also thinking, so if you convert the Bitcoin into actual currency that you normally use, £10 or whatever, do you think that burger is cheaper if you were paying using £10, or is it actually cheaper paying using Bitcoin?
So whether it's cheaper or more expensive doesn't really matter. What matters is when I make the payment, is it fixed? So you think about it, if I go into Starbucks and order a grande cappuccino or whatever,
yeah,
and up on the board it says it's £4. Okay, if I then make my payment and they charge me £5, I'm not going to be very happy about that. Okay, and this is the problem with when you're making payments in crypto. That if you're doing something where it's taking your crypto, converting it into fiat and everything, and there's constant exchange fluctuations, then you're not going to be very happy. So this is why when I bought the burger, certainly, I seem to remember that the price was actually fixed in Bitcoin, which is quite funny, because it was something at the time. It was like 0.000261 or something like that. It was like we had to go through several times to make sure that we had the right number of zeros involved, because it was in terms of Bitcoin, it was such a small amount. So what they should have really done was priced it in Satoshis, because then it would have, which is like a 100 millionth of a Bitcoin. So it would have made it easier. So in terms of whether it's cheaper or more expensive, it shouldn't make any difference. It's really, is the price that is being advertised the price that you're paying? That's the crucial thing, and you can overcome that by pricing in the currency that you're going to pay in. So if you price it in Bitcoin and you pay in Bitcoin, the price doesn't change. It's fixed. Your problem is if you price it as £4, but you can pay that £4 in Bitcoin, then that'll be constantly fluctuating. And then once that comes through, it might have changed.
Yeah.
Does that answer that? Okay.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Gary.
And this is where it's fascinating as well, because I was doing that stuff like 9 years ago.
Right. On that note, that leads me to a question linked to this. So what or which banks would you recommend, or is recommend the right word? Well, let me use it. Let me borrow it for now. Recommend to use for exchanging, or a bank that you could, buy cryptocurrencies with, a bank that accepts, cryptocurrencies without any hassle, that you could do your transaction without you really even thinking of it.
Yep. So
in the UK.
First of all, that was the first question I was going to ask. It depends which country you were in. I have found UK banks to be consistently crypto unfriendly. Okay.
Yes.
And it's really
by design.
Yeah, and it's really a matter of how unfriendly do you want them to be. So I've done some stuff with one bank where they were slightly unfriendly, in that they simply refused to process transactions with some crypto exchanges. So I did it at one point where I was just trying to buy and sell some Bitcoin, linked to my bank account, to a well-recognized exchange, shall we say? And they just refused to handle payments. They red flagged them, and no matter how much I argued of, well, this is just a legitimate exchange, they said we don't care. You're not doing it. That's quite unfriendly. I also know other people who have tried to do transactions, and so what the bank has done is frozen their bank account. Which is far more unfriendly. Because a bank, but people may not realize this, that banks are legally entitled to freeze your account, not give you a reason, and your funds are just frozen until they've done the investigation. And they never need to tell you why they've frozen the account. All they'll say is that we've frozen your account. You can't access, and this is where it comes back to your money, because it's not your money.
It's not.
No. And this is why they can freeze it and refuse to give it back until they've done their investigation. So some banks are outwardly hostile, that if you try and do crypto transactions, they will freeze your... I've known, certainly business accounts, I've known business people who've had their bank accounts frozen. And I know somebody who actually ended up moving to Canada because he was so frustrated at just how unfriendly the banks were in the UK. So I've yet to find any bank in the UK that has been consistently tolerant. Okay.
Right.
I've heard several of the mainstream banks, people have said, not had a problem, and I'm not going to mention specific names, but I've not had a problem with such and such a bank. And then someone else has said, well, you're lucky because I've had a nightmare with them. So I can't honestly recommend any in the UK as being crypto friendly. And that's why you start looking at variations, shall we say, on using banking services that are not necessarily UK based. So Revolut's an example. Revolut I can talk about because they've got some banking licenses now. They do deal in crypto. But I think they're an authorized bank, but not a properly regulated bank in the UK. Because they've got their regulation in another country. It might be like Lithuania or somewhere, and so you've got a concept of passporting and equivalence, which means they can offer banking services in other countries. Well, I've not kept up to date with that. So they were developing a reputation as being quite crypto friendly, because you can actually have a crypto account with Revolut. But if I remember correctly, it was a kind of quite a clever thing. It's a bit like the way you've got layer 2 solutions here, that you didn't actually have the private keys to the crypto yourself. What you had was a right of use, I think it was described as. So effectively what that means is that Revolut, if you had a Revolut crypto card, unless you had your own crypto wallet, it would allow you to buy and sell as though you own the crypto, but you don't actually own the crypto. You have the value of it.
Right.
So that's quite nice in a way, because it allows you to get exposure to the up and down movements of crypto without actually worrying about the private keys. However, the converse is if you're a true crypto advocate, there's the old saying of not your keys, not your crypto. And the very reason you want the keys is you don't want someone else to hold crypto. Just the same as a crypto exchange. The recommendation is always take the crypto off the exchange and put it in your own self-custody in some way. So I'm not going to give any recommendations on any banks, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's
but because I've also experienced it, that there are times where a bank has allowed a transaction 1 week, and then a few weeks later that they refused, and vice versa. So I found the whole experience very frustrating, and that's where it's going to be interesting. That there are some kind of like political changes afoot, some attitudes where the British government is saying that they're trying to be more regulatory competitive with other countries and be attractive to companies in there. And that might mean that they end up mandating that the regulators become more crypto friendly. And I look forward to that.
Subject to interpretation, isn't it?
That's right, exactly right. Sorry, I see we were joined by Oscar before, who stayed very quiet, who's joined us as well. Do you want to say hi, Oscar?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, excuse me, I joined late again.
Not a problem at all. We're just talking about banking services and crypto in the UK in particular, and the kind of challenges with it, really.
Yeah, definitely don't enjoy that experience. We've had a few issues. We've had an account frozen before, and yeah, not pleasant.
And it is the thing that they can freeze it without an explanation of why, and they can hold it for like 3 months or something, which is pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing, but I've had transactions from one crypto exchange to another that were frozen, and they said justified, this is your account and you're transferring it to yourself, and that's been locked in there for about a year, and I'm still contesting it and getting nowhere. So, be it banks or exchanges, it's not the most pleasant experience.
So, King, it comes back to your point about what you're saying about friendly. In the UK, it seems to be not so much about being friendly, but about just how unfriendly you want them to be. So,
correct.
Yeah, and I guess as well, that's why a lot of people use things like stable coins, because once you're into the crypto ecosystem, you're not interacting with what I call the on ramps and the off ramps anymore. You're no longer converting between fiat and crypto and between crypto and fiat, which is the on ramps and off ramps where the banks get involved. If you're using a stable coin like Tether, USDC, whatever, then that allows you to hold your funds in crypto still without constantly converting it back to a fiat currency, and that allows you to then carry on transacting if you're like active in buying and selling crypto and exchanging it now.
That is a curiosity, actually. I was just thinking that if you were transferring your crypto from one place to another, I thought you can just go directly. Does it have to go through a bank?
No, crypto to crypto is fine. So, Bitcoin's Bitcoin, it's fine. It's the point at which you want to off-ramp it into a fiat currency. It's how do you convert that Bitcoin or that Litecoin or any other? How do you convert that into a traditional currency? So, dollars, pounds, euros, or whatever.
Mhm.
That's where at some point it's likely to hit a bank. And,
Yeah.
and that's where certainly I think about 5-6 years ago, one way people started doing it was when PayPal introduced an ability to transacting with crypto. And so what people started doing was they were doing their transactions in crypto, and then when they wanted to convert that into fiat, they'd make the crypto payment into the PayPal account and get PayPal to convert it into pounds or dollars, and then transfer from the PayPal account into the fiat bank account. And because PayPal, credible organization, license regulated, everything like that,
Yeah.
then the banks didn't refuse that.
Well, Oscar, you could have done that.
Yeah, PayPal has got high fees though. That's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Oh, I see. There's the high fees. Okay.
Yeah, and again, it's when you're going via a third party, you're kind of defeating the object of crypto, which was this whole peer-to-peer type thing. And this is a fascinating thing. The problems only really occur when you're crossing the bridge between crypto and fiat. If you remain entirely within the crypto ecosystem, then it all works fine. The ability to make peer-to-peer payments, to receive things, everything. There's no bank, there's no third party involved. It's the point at which you want to interact with traditional money that you get the problems with it. And that's where the banks start getting a bit antsy at times. So, yeah. So there we go. That's quite a few things covered, really. It's interesting. We're talking about we can't even remember what the first topic we were talking about with there. But certainly you look at how we've got blockchain, AI, VR, MR, AR, metaverse potentially all linking in with that triangle of forces. You got the traceability of physical things. And this is a great thing, is that those physical things, they might be like infrastructure assets, like on construction, building sites or whatever. I think there's going to be a big growth in 2025 in this area, which is around what are called real world assets. So RWAs, they tend to be called. That might be using crypto tokens to represent physical assets. So, it might be a tractor or, a building site or whatever. Or it might be shares in a company, or it might be a photograph, or it might be representation of currency. So this is where you may suddenly have it with crypto tokens crossing the divide back and beginning to represent ownership of fiat in some way. Interesting one to close off with.
Yeah, that's correct. I know in some part in the US, they started tokenizations of real estates.
Yep.
Where people have started, purchasing their portions of the real estates. Yeah.
The thing quickly, we're going to have to close in a moment. I have seen in excess of 60 real estate projects where they've all talked about tokenizing real estate. Every single one of them has failed. And they've typically failed because to be able to properly tokenize real estate means you need expertise in real estate rules. You need expertise in crypto and blockchains, and you also need expertise in traditional finance as well, because it'll generally involve all three.
And a smart contract as well.
Yeah, that's right. And my experience is that most companies up till now have not had the legitimate deep expertise in all of those areas. So you need traditional finance experience, you need crypto experience, which includes things, as you say, smart contracts, and you need real estate experience. And I've seen so many projects which started with we're going to tokenize purchase of a building, and we're going to have fractional ownership. And it means in the UK, you wouldn't pay stamp duty because you're no longer owning it. You're owning a token, which none of them have worked out yet. So we'll see where that goes. Maybe that's a conversation for next week. We can pick up.
Correct.
Meanwhile, we're going to have to close off, I'm afraid. It's that time of day where we finish, and just want to say thank you to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
Gary.
great day, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye bye.